Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, and this brewery are known mainly for their New England Hazy IPAs, although I've had quite a few styles from them and they've always turned out to be pretty nice, and they are one of the most respected breweries here in Scotland at the moment. They're getting a lot of hype and it's quite justified based on my recent experiences. So it's always nice to try the new beers from these guys when I come home. This particular beer that we're going to look at today is one that I wanted to review since I heard about it. I got lucky because they just did a rebrew of it before I arrived back. So definitely curious to see what this one has in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we get on then. So for this review, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again. We're going to go to Yoker to be precise, and we're having a look at another beer from Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called the Last Bus to Yoker. It comes in at 11% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, triple IPA. So yeah, really curious to see what this beer is going to offer us up. I think I haven't had a triple IPA from these guys, if memory serves me correctly. I could be wrong on that though, but I think this is my 10th or so review from Overtone, and they've certainly not disappointed yet. I've had some really nice imperial stouts from them. I've had a regular stout. The very first beer that I tried, the coffee IPA, was a really interesting one as well. But they're always pumping out new IPAs. We've had West Coasters, New Englands, session IPAs, and they've always been pretty good actually. So this is one of the Scottish breweries that you really need to check out if you haven't done so already. But yeah, always nice to feature them here on the channel, so let's see how we go with this one. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, as I'm at home in the motherland, and beyond that, any other times that I have the opportunity. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Overtone Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So Overtone Brewing, as I've told you already, are based in Glasgow, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wai Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. So he'd been a home brewer for a number of years before he founded the company, and the name Overtone actually comes from his love of techno music, and that's why you get these kind of techno-inspired artworks on the front of the beers as well. But Bo Wai hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire over in New England in America, as his head brewer, and he previously worked as a head chef, but also as a brewer in England, New York, and also in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, who are a lovely little Belgian style brewery that I recommend you check out should you get the chance. But also involved in the brewing team is Martin Conahan, who has worked in the craft beer scene in New Zealand for a number of years, and he takes part in the brewing process, but he also does various other things around the brewery itself as well. So quite an experienced and well-versed brew team, and whatever they're doing, it seems to work. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank, and they began operations back in 2018. But the brewery don't have a fixed range of beer, although there are ones that come out very regularly, but they're always brewing new beers. I think they release 1 or 2 new beers a week, if memory serves me correctly. But as of September 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced over 50 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and as I mentioned to you earlier, it's mainly sort of New England hazy IPAs that they're producing, but you will get West Coasters. I've seen Hefeweizens from them. I've had a lager beer. There's a few sours there now, and yeah, they released their first barrel aged stout recently, which I will review for you at some point over the next couple of months, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. But yeah, very well respected brewery, getting a lot of hype at the moment, and in my experience it is quite justified, to be honest with you. These guys are doing some very Very good stuff. But yeah, that is all I can say about Overtone Brewing Company for the moment. Hopefully we can get these guys on and meet the brewery segment at some point. Maybe I can see about going through to Glasgow in October if these guys will meet me. So I'll send out a few emails and see what we can make happen. But yeah, it would be very cool to organise something with these guys, so we'll see what we can do. But yeah, if you want to learn more about Overtone Brewing, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. You can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages as well to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with this beer itself. We'll go on to the tasting. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. As you can see, the camera doesn't like this one because of the shiny silver background. The camera always hates these shiny things. Even the new camera, I guess you can see that reflection there, but if we tilt it a little bit, you can get a nice view of that artwork there. I'll just bring it a little bit closer for you. But the thing with Overtone is you always get a nice kind of fact sheet on the side here. So it says here, the triple dry hopped with Idaho 7, Mosaic and Sabro. This beer is not shy of flavour, huge mango and sweet pineapple flavours with hints of coconut and peach. That should be interesting, but we'll see if we agree with that. But yeah, Mosaic, Idaho 7 and Sabro. We know these hops quite well. All three of them are American. I think all three of them are about 13, 14% alpha acid. Mosaic gives you lovely juicy tangerines. Idaho 7 gives you a lot of that kind of soft, tropical, fruity kind of character. And Sabro is a kind of mandarin-y, more sharper orange with a bit of coconut in it. So yeah, this should be quite nice. But 440ml can. I think, if memory serves me correctly, I paid about £6.50 or something for this. So £6.50 is probably about, you know, €7.50, €8, something like that. So that's going to be about 75 or 80 Swedish kroner for those of you watching over there. And that'll translate to, you know, what will that translate to? The euros would translate, maybe if it's pounds, £6.50, that's going to be what, about $9 for the can or something like that. So yeah, beer over here in Scotland is actually a little bit more expensive than in Sweden, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, but it's because of the free market, if you like, the socialised market that we have in Sweden keeps the prices down a little bit. But 11% triple IPA, this one. Let's get it out and get on with the tasting then. This is the Last Bus Tae Yoker from Overtone Brewing Company through in Yoker in Glasgow. Yeah, nice. So, oh, you can see here this already. This is going to be an absolute monster. So yeah, I'll be sharing this one with my dad, of course, as I do with most of the beers when I'm back home in the motherland. But I think that will be enough for the moment to do the aroma and stuff like that. So yeah, as you can see, it looks pretty damn impressive. So let's have a look at this one then. So what I'll say, the colour of this beer to the naked eye is actually quite a bit paler than you guys are seeing it on the camera, as far as I can see from the screen. Maybe the screen is just very bright, but this is actually a very kind of pale, it's a very pale but quite murky sort of mixed tropical fruit juice colour, I would say. Before the head disappears on this one though, I would say that this is a kind of creamy coloured head. I wouldn't say it's perfect white, I would say a creamy coloured head, and it's poured with about a half to 2/3 finger of that kind of creamy head there. But it looks very, very nice, this one. But as I say, I would say that it's I would definitely say this is a nice kind of mixed tropical fruit juice colour, but I can see on the camera it looks like it's a very bright yellow to you guys. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. A New England IPA like this is going to undergo a wort boil of, you know, 60 to 90 minutes, something like that. But the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any adjuncts that you put in any barrel aging that you do to the beer as well is also going to affect the colour. But usually those two variables come more into play when we're talking about sour beers. But yeah, this one, it certainly looks the part. Now, the level of haziness on this is pretty impressive, but when it's a New England IPA and it's 11% ABV, you kind of expect that. This is one of the soupier and gloopier ones that I've come across, even from Overtone Brewing Company. But yeah, the level of haze in these beers depends on 1, the wheat content, 2, the oat content, and the yeast is also going to play a role as well. But there's no real rule for this. It varies from brewery to brewery, recipe to recipe, and so on. But this one looks pretty damn impressive, I would say. I do like how this beer looks. It looks aesthetically very, very nice, actually. So yeah, I don't think there's too much else we really need to say about the appearance of this one. I always like comparing these to different fruit juices though, because that's just what the appearance of the New England IPA reminds me of. But nothing surprising about the appearance. Let's go on and have a look at the aroma of this beer before we get stuck into it. So there we go. That smells really nice. You can tell that this is a big boozy monster of a thing. I do actually have another triple IPA in the fridge from these guys that's even heavier, so I can just imagine what that's going to be like. But yeah, this one smells as if it's going to be really interesting. But yeah, straight away with this one, you can smell it's got that big, chewy kind of sweetness to it. You can smell a lovely big kind of quite deep green component to it, but still quite bright at the same time. And there's lots of lovely kind of oily, but still juicy fruit coming out of this one. So we'll dive into the aroma in a little minute. But as I've told you with New England IPAs before, I think there's 6 different directions these can go in. They can be more farmhousey and yeasty, rye leaning and grainy, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, bready leaning and more based on the barley malt, and you can also get quite sweet ones as well. But quite often these beers will display multiple characteristics, so you get various different things out of them. But yeah, this one, I'm not 100% sure what direction this is going to go in, but I suspect a little bit wheaty, quite big and creamy, but also quite sweet at the same time. I suspect that's what we're going to get from this one. But the aroma is very nice, so let's delve into this a little bit more. So the malty side of things then, you can definitely smell a bit of that kind of soft white bready base to the beer. Absolutely, you can smell that soft white bread in there. There's a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty character as well, which I can really appreciate. But you can certainly smell the wheat in this one kind of thickening the beer out. At the back of the nose, you definitely get a little touch of wheaty bitiness coming out of this one, but the wheat isn't too prominent, if that makes sense. It's got a nice kind of smooth, as I say, you get a bit of bread crust, a bit of a smooth white bready note to this one, a kind of wheaty thickening element to this one, a bit of bitiness at the back of the nose, but you've also got a really nice kind of smooth, creamy, oaty character coming out of this beer as well, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, the aroma coming out of this beer, I think, is very, very nice actually. Yeah. So on the how would you say, on the sweetness side of things, it's also got a fair little bit going on. You can certainly get a good little bit of that kind of Werther's Original big, Werther's Original butterscotchy, brown sugary sort of thing to this beer. There is definitely an element of sweetness to this, but when it comes to the fact, when it comes down to it, this one is a triple IPA at 11% ABV. You need a little bit of sweetness there to deal with the booziness in these things. So yeah, I think that certainly works for it. But for me, it's got a really nice balance to it. Big thick bready notes, bit of wheaty bitiness, and a big oaty kind of creamy character as well. So I really like how this beer goes about its business, that's for sure. So yeah, malty side of things gets a thumbs up from me. I do like it. So well done to Overtone once again. I'm curious to see how that translates into the flavour. But let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer. So hoppy side of things then. There is a wee touch of earthiness to this one, but not overly much. That's going to be from the Mosaic, I would think, rather than the other two. But there is quite a big, deep, floral aromatic character to this one. Now, when it comes to the hoppy side of these beers, you have to remember that New England IPAs depend more on late edition hopping. Early edition hopping in the wort boil is what gives you the bitterness. And as you go through the wort boil, of course, you've got a progressive trade-off from bitterness over to flavour and aroma. And of course, dry hopping is pretty much all flavour and aroma. But West Coast IPAs have a bit more early edition hopping than the New Englands do. So yeah, bear that in mind. But yeah, the aroma from this one on the hoppy side of things is quite nice. You've got quite a nice deep and very slightly dank, I would say, floral aromatic character. All three of these hops, of course, are high alpha acid American hops. So they're all going to contribute a little bit to that, but there's a wee bit of spiciness in there, not too much, but more of a deep floral aromatic note to this one. It's almost got a little bit of a wet leafy kind of character to it as well, but at the front of the nose you certainly get a bit of a kind of brighter, grassier kind of thing. But I wouldn't describe this beer as being overly zesty. It's more like a kind of wet, grassy character I think that this one gives off. But the green component is pretty damn nice, I have to say, and it suits the rest of the beer. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity components to the beer then. So, yeah, it's actually really nicely balanced. To me, it smells like the Idaho 7 is the one that's kind of sitting in the background a little bit. There's a lot of kind of nice juicy mango for me. You can smell a wee teeny hint of a slightly stronger passion fruit, but that really, again, that takes a back seat for me. There's a lot of juicy mango in this one. You get a bit of a softer apricot-y character in there. I can see what they mean with the peach and when that we're saying on the label, because you do get just a little bit of that slightly sharper, riper kind of tropical quality out of this beer as well, which is interesting. So I do see what they mean when it comes to the peach, and I think there is a softer tropical element to this as well, which is, you know, you do get a little bit, there's a sort of apricot-y and kind of pineapple-y element to this one as well. The pineapple is quite nice and juicy, I would say, but I do feel there is a wee bit of a softer apricot underneath too. But these are things that we have seen in the past from Idaho 7, but I think it does a nice job, and the more that your nose adjusts to this beer, I think the more it kind of tunes in to the Idaho 7 side of the beer, and the tropical notes will come out a little bit more. But certainly there's quite a big oily orangey character to this one, and when you've got Mosaic and Sabro in the mix, you would expect that. But the orangey character in this one is quite interesting because it's quite juicy at the same time, but it has a wee bit of the zestiness you'd expect of Amarillo. And I think I've actually come across Mosaic and Sabro together in other beers and said that it does almost come across as a little bit more like Amarillo. It comes across as when you put these two together, rather than being softer and juicier, they almost combine to just be a little bit more oily, and they give you a bit more zest as you would expect from Amarillo. So I'm noticing that again in this beer, that you're getting a wee bit of a slightly more oily orangey character out of it. But as you know, if you've watched the channel, I love orangey leaning IPAs, so it's right up my street. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is pretty nice. I don't get too much of the coconut from the Sabro. I think if I was to smell this beer blind, I don't know if I would pick up on Sabro. Sabro's usually a very distinctive hop, of course, but yeah, I don't get too much of the coconut from Sabro in this one, I have to say. I think it's more the soft tropical notes and a nice oily orangey character for me. But yeah, I think we can put the rest of it in the glass and start off on the tasting section then. So yeah, no sediment left on the bottom of the can as far as I can see. Let me just line that up again, and now we can go for a taste of this beer. So yes, deep breath. So this one is the Last Bus Tae Yoker, an 11% triple hazy New England, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Overtone Brewing through in Yoker in Glasgow. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Yeah, it's pretty damn nice once again, and I'm not surprised. You know, Overtone are very, very capable, and this beer, to the point, you know, see when you've got an 11% triple IPA that drinks like this, it's almost a bit crazy, because you're just like, it's quite dangerous actually how easy to drink this beer is. It doesn't really feel any more boozy or anything like that than some of the double IPAs that I've drunk, or yeah, it just feels a little bit thicker and a bit more kind of creamy in a sense. It doesn't feel any boozier than some of the, you know, the 7% New Englands that I've had. It's crazy that. But yeah, if I was tasting that blind, I would struggle to tell that that was a triple IPA, just because it doesn't have. It really masks its alcohol exceptionally well. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about this, because if I'm going to drink a triple IPA, you kind of want to know it's a triple IPA. You do want it to be a bit boozier and a bit kind of heavier in a sense. And I think with the New England IPAs, it's a little bit easier to mask the booziness than it is with a West Coaster, in a sense. Because the West Coaster, you get more of that boozy, caramelly thing. But with the New Englands, you know, you can cover it up a little bit more with more oats or whatever. So yeah, that's another interesting beerosophical question, I guess we could say. But in terms of just a general New England IPA, this again is another very, very solid example from Overtone Brewing, and it's lovely. It's another lovely beer, and it shows you why these guys are getting a lot of plaudits, and they really do deserve the attention that they're getting at the moment, I would say. But yeah, a big thumbs up to them this one. My first impression of this beer is that it's a big, smooth, creamy and very soft New England IPA, this one, generally speaking. But let's break the flavour down and describe it for you a little bit more in depth, should we say. So yeah, it's good, this one. It does actually get more and more juicy the more that you drink of it. But yeah, straight away with this beer then, you can feel that nice, soft, bread crusty quality that just blankets the middle of your palate. So middle third and back third of your palate, you've got a backbone of a soft, kind of fresh bread crusty thing there. And on top of that, you've got a smooth, lovely, kind of fluffy white bready layer to it. That's the barley malt coming out of the beer, which I think works very well. And I think it's usually extra pale malts that these guys like to use in their malt bases. But yeah, that lingers there and it sits there the further into the aftertaste that you go. So this is another very, very nice beer from Overtone, in my opinion. So thumbs up to these guys once again. So I think the more that you drink of it, you actually do get a wee bit of the booziness out of it. But again, I wouldn't say this is any more boozy than some of the double IPAs I've had from them. Although, you know, it really doesn't feel any heavier than the 8% that we had a couple of days back. But yeah, so on top of that nice kind of soft bready layer that I was talking about, let's focus on the middle third of the palate now. You certainly get a bit of a thicker wheaty character coming out of this one. You can feel that thickening out the beer in the middle third of your palate. Then on top of that, you can feel that big, you can feel that nice big, you can feel that big oaty, creamy kind of note in the beer, and the oats are really dense in this. You can feel right down that middle third of your palate. There's a big, dense oat layer in this one, and as you move out towards the edge of the palate in this beer, you can feel the oats just kind of lighten up a little bit and kind of smoothing out in a sense, and they do almost sweeten up a little bit as well, actually, which is kind of interesting. So you've got this typical base layer, bread crust, soft white bread, a thicker wheaty layer, then the big oaty creaminess sitting on top of that. But in the middle of your palate, you've got a nice kind of how would you say, you've got a nice kind of, you do get a little bit of that Werther's original kind of sweetness out of this beer, but it's actually not as big and sweet as I thought it was going to be. I thought this beer would be a little bit sweeter based on the aroma, but you can feel there's a little circle in that middle third of your palate with a very soft kind of butterscotchy, butter candy type thing. But yeah, in the dead centre of the palate, there's a nice kind of sweet caramelly element to the beer, which do that you can get a bit of a straight up sweet caramel in this, but very quickly when you move out of that, it does become more kind of butterscotchy, and there's maybe a teeny little hint of a biscuity note out towards the kind of edges, the extremities of that middle third of your palate. But the malty side of the beer, I think, works quite well. But this strikes me as one of the kind of more creamy leaning ones that I've had from Overtone in the past. But the other one that I had the other day, the double IPA, was a little bit more farmhousey. So yeah, it's been a wee while. I can't remember the ones that I had at Christmas, of course, apart from the West Coast IPA and the lager, of course, which were a bit different, and the stouts. So I can't remember back to what the IPAs I had at Christmas were like, but it does seem that they changed the malt bases up a little bit to have one that's a little bit more wheaty leaning, a little bit more oaty leaning, and a bit more farmhousey leaning. And that's what you want. You kind of have to do that if you are going to focus on a particular style. You've got to vary things up a little bit and do different things, and obviously Overtone are doing that. But we've said all we need to say about the middle third of your palate. Let's focus on the back third of your palate. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a wee bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of a bread crusty sort of thing. And then as you go into that back third of your palate, you can feel again bread crusty base, bit of white bread on top of it. You've got a nice kind of thicker wheaty layer coming out of it, some nice big kind of bitey wheaty elements towards the back tip of your tongue actually, which is quite nice. Then you've also got some of that big yeasty character sitting on top of the thing there, which I do like. So that slightly bitier wheaty quality that the beer has does kind of linger there into the aftertaste a little bit. I do get that, but on top of the wheaty notes, you can feel that more airy, yeasty note out of this one, but the yeast actually feels quite heavy. It actually feels a little bit more dense in this, so you actually have a lot of quite dense flavour in that back third of your palate with this beer, but you can certainly feel, as you often get, that the back third of your tongue, the flavour is slightly taller, but as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit, and as you go into the middle third of your palate, it just squashes down even more. And it squashes down even more, and you can feel the flavour is a little bit more kind of condensed in a sense. So the malty part of this beer is really dense and really thick actually, but triple IPA, you expect this. Yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, so back corners of the palate, there's certainly a wee bit of earthiness there. It would be Mosaic, I think, that's most likely to contribute to that part of the beer, but as you move further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a wee bit, but then very quickly towards the front corners of the palate, it gets a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic in a sense, and you do have a wee bit of a kind of deeper, you've got a little bit of a kind of deeper more dank kind of quality line underneath this one, but you get a lovely big floral aromatic character to this one. But as you go round the front curve of the palate, the beer is a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say, and I can certainly appreciate that that element of this beer. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that particular regard. So yeah, another, again, very nice stuff from Overtone Brewing on that side of things. But there's not too much zestiness to this one. Again, it's quite wet. I would say, yeah, quite wet and grassy and quite wet and leafy in its floral character too. But yeah, I like it. So on to the fruity side of things then with this beer, the front third of your palate. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, there's a wee bit of a bready build up there, a little touch of bread crusty note, but then you've got a nice smooth white bready and thicker kind of quality. Based on that, on that front third of your palate too, and on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on those. So it's quite, the fruity character to this one is quite similar to what we picked up in the aroma. So towards the back of that front third of your palate, you certainly get a little bit more of a kind of passion fruity note there. You can certainly feel a bit of that. That's going to come from the Idaho 7, but as you move further forward, you do get a very juicy and quite ripe mango flavour out of this one. I can see why they would say peach on the can, because I was picking up peach in the aroma, but not so much in the flavour, I would say. It just feels like a very juicy and slightly ripe mango. Not quite green enough to be guava, I would say, but yeah, I do get a wee bit of a kind of more juicy mango out of this one. But as you push further forward, you get a little bit of an apricot-y character out of this one. You do start to get a bit of a juicy pineapple there, and that kind of, the pineapple kind of goes over into the front half of that front third of your palate as well. But the front half of that front third of your palate is all about the kind of juicy, slightly more oily, orangey characters. In the flavour, I do get a wee bit more of the kind of coconutty thing that you'd expect from the Sabro. You can feel that just behind the kind of front tip of your tongue, if you like, and it lingers into the aftertaste actually. But yeah, there's a nice kind of soft, juicy, orangey kind of character to this one. It's quite hard to see. I think it's maybe a softer tangerine rather than being a sharper mandarin. And it's not quite just an oily straight up orange actually either. But yeah, the orangey character in this one is quite nice, and it becomes a little bit more prominent. Once your palate adjusts to the beer a bit more, you will get more of that oily orange. But I think the mango actually has a little bit more pungency. The Idaho 7, I think, has a wee bit more pungency than the other two hops in this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, fruity side of this beer is quite nicely done. So I disagree with them on the peach, I agree with them on the pineapple, and I get quite a bit of the mango, and the mango's quite big and juicy for sure. But yeah, I think Idaho 7 sticks out a wee bit more than the other two hops in this. But overall, it is another just very, very nice beer from Overtone. So big thumbs up to them. But I think we've said everything we need to say about the flavour. So let's round off with the mouthfeel then. So mouthfeel wise, this beer is full bodied, there's no doubt in my mind about that. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It does feel quite clean. You know, we're always proud of our tap water that we have in Scotland. Clean water, that's not a surprise. So quite a clean, but quite, I wouldn't describe it as the thickest beer that I've come across, but you can feel that, you know, it's quite dense in its flavour. So yeah, full bodied, nice and clean, smooth carbonation. It works, it absolutely works. In terms of the hoppy bitterness in this one, I think this is quite low. You know, usually triple IPAs have a wee bit more bitterness in them to kind of match the booziness. This one seems to not need it because it really leans towards that creamy end of the spectrum within this style bracket. So yeah, I think this is quite low bitterness. I think this is 25 or 30, which is pretty standard actually, although you do get a wee bit of green, you know, that dank green thing lingering into the aftertaste, so it could be a wee bit more, but I'm tempted just to say 25, 30 IBUs. The malt base, as we said, is very smooth. It's got a wee bit of bitiness to it, but this is a really creamy and smooth beer. It's not overly sweet either in its malt base, really just a big smooth creamy sort of thing. And the fruity side of the beer, it's got a lovely soft but juicy tropical side to it, and a wee bit of a more kind of citrusy note to it. But I'd say the tropical fruits are a wee bit more kind of prominent in this one than the citrusy fruits. But overall, it's another lovely beer from Overtone, and that's what we've come to expect from them. So I have to say, I'm curious to try the other triple IPA and see how it kind of varies from this one, in fact. But yeah, another awesome beer from Overtone, and not unexpected, I have to say. So yeah, this one was the Last Bus Tae Yoker, an 11% triple IPA. And I think it's worked out very, very nicely, so let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing Company, and as I said, we will return to these guys at some point soon. I've got another 3 beers from these guys in the fridge, and I will try and get those published before I return to Sweden a little bit later on. But yeah, check out this one. If you haven't tried some of the Overtone beers, I highly recommend that you do. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon.